NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go. Back in the can for another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast and a highly recommended guest coming straight from the blue skies, top of the charts. Who the fuck are you and what do you do?
Well, my name's Carlo and I get to travel around skydiving all over the world and pretty much whatever I get up to. I'm retired at 41.
Retired at 41. Dude, who gets to do that?
People that are a lot harder to kill than they are smarter.
Wait a second. In the real world, that might be a very small number of people, but this is skydivers now. I mean, there's a lot of us are probably harder to kill than we are smart.
That's it. But I just happen to do that in the military. So
okay, good.
There's a definite backup plan for it.
Good. Well, traveling the world and jumping out of airplanes is kind of the whole point of the podcast. So I'm definitely talking to the right guy. So yeah. I always start out the same way. I always get my guests to jump back to how they got started, not necessarily in skydiving, but in anything extreme. So kind of what led you into the wild side, so to speak?
Honestly, it was the military. Like I grew up in a suburb of Toronto, so major city of Canada. Um, Joined the infantry and went out west, and specifically knew I wanted to be a paratrooper. Um, but me and actually another buddy, Danny, he was from Toronto as well, and so neither of us had done anything extreme. Like the craziest thing was maybe on a skateboard, like going down the street, and I wasn't even a good skateboarder. Um, so we knew like, okay, we're about to go on our jump course. One of the biggest things is make sure that you don't hesitate in the door. But we'd never experienced that. So yeah, we both took a first jump course up at Eden North. So just west of Edmonton, like in October, just northern Canada, cold, very cold. And I totally remember crawling out on the strut of that aircraft, and we did ID, and the smile on my face when I was outside, I was hooked. Like to the point that the instructor thought I wasn't going to jump because I was the second one to go. And my brain was just going through all the things I had to do. Like I took it more serious than any school, like any of that stuff. So I was just focused on what needed to happen. And when it was my turn, I did all the steps. And I guess once I was outside, I was like, well, I'm dangling from the strut. Like you're going there. You don't need to think about this anymore. It's go time. And the smile, when I look back at that instructor, I was hooked. That was it.
It's an amazing thing, right? When you end up in that position. I mean, I used to use the line all the time with my tandem students describing how we'd be getting out of the airplane. And of course, you get some that are just terrified they're going to do something wrong. And my response was, if you fuck up everything I just told you and we fall out of the plane, guess what that means? It means we're skydiving. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
So you say you took it incredibly seriously. Was that something that was normal for you, or were you like a lot of us in that if it wasn't engaging, you didn't pay attention at all?
Well, I guess now the explanation is ADD or ADHD. None of that stuff mattered to me leading up to that moment. So like school, I went, that's where you're told to go. Sports, I could do them. I didn't care how intense my coaches or my buddies wanted to win. I just was having fun. Like, I think maybe because it was part of my job and I took my job very serious by that point in the military, but it mattered. I guess the moment that it mattered, the focus was there.
So now, was this first jump with the military or was it a civilian operation?
No, complete civilian operation. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't scared of heights, and literally, we're not going to hesitate in the door.
I like that you pre-planned your paratrooper training by going out and doing it first just to make sure.
Well, but that was once I had gotten on that pipeline. Like, it was literally so that would have been October, November, and then 2 weeks later, we were shipping off to to where Canada, like we don't do our para in the same place. So we were shipping out to Trenton to do our basic para. And so it was just like, I don't know. The military is just so much, like you're so young, you don't have a clue. And there's so much ego involved, and I can't let this guy down. And that guy can't see me be less of a man.
Sure.
And so like, we hear stories of like a guy that hesitated in the door or that refused to jump one day, and like they kicked him out of the unit. They sent him to another, and that could have all been bullshit. I don't have a clue, but it was enough to be like, that can't be me. Like I need to figure this out right now, real quick. Yeah,
well,
that's kind of it.
Especially if you're already on that path, but it had to have given you maybe a bit of an edge going into the actual training, knowing that you could do it already.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm trying to think about it. I was like, I wasn't too scared. Like, but there were plenty of guys that weren't scared. I think there are people that's logical side of the brain can figure out what the emotions happen, but then realize like, man, I think we had a double course. So we had like 60 some odd guys, and it's very structured. And our instructors told us that. And we happened to have all the supplementary instructors were from our unit because we did have a double. And they were like, this is the most professional course that you're ever going to do in the military. Like, it is structured. There's no added people coming on and yelling. Like, they want you to get to the other end, and all you got to do is meet the standard. And so from day one, when you're doing the drills, like, it's all very structured. And I don't know, I'm guessing I was like all the other guys. We watched all the military movies getting up to it, and like, they've been doing this thing forever. So the thing to fear is just you creating some nonsense. Like, the parachute will, 99.9% work, and you're going to hit the ground and it's going to suck and go again.
It is obviously with the military a lot more structured, and I would imagine, absolutely have the feeling that, hey, this is something they've been doing for a very long time. But that's also you saying that they're doing a course set up to succeed is not the mentality a lot of people have about military training, right? Because we watch all the boot camp movies where they're trying to weed out the weak links and all that shit, and it's nice to hear that training was specifically designed to help people get through it and get to the other end.
Well, yeah. Well, once you're in para, you've done your basic training, so you've proven that you can be a basic soldier somewhere. Then you've done your infantry training, so you've proven that, like, hey man, I'll put the same weight you're putting on and I'll get out there. And for Canada, you go and you work in a unit first. So like, I was at battalion before, so it's not like just this pipeline to do all these courses and then you end up in battalion. So like, you've already shown to them like, hey, I want to be here and I want to be part of you. Like, it's a volunteer unit or organization. But yeah, it's like, you ultimately are jumping. Like, you could mess it up. There are guys that mess it up. They try to kill themselves. I don't know why, but they'll try. So,
well, you said earlier that you think it's a certain group of people that kind of are able to separate the emotion from what you have to do. That's that whole recognizing this is something I get to shit my pants about when I'm done and having a drink later. Feel the freak out later, shit your pants on the ground.
Oh yeah. But like, talking to the guys, like, we were all stoked. And maybe people just hit it really well. But I remember there were guys that like were vocal, like, man, I'm scared. Like, this is a thing. And you could see it in their energy that they were jacked up really good.
Sure.
But yeah, by the time we were in that aircraft and get ready to go, I was just like, every dream that you ever had, like, right? Like, it's, as a kid, that was all of it. Like, I am dressed up in Army equipment. I got my static line hooked up. I got my buddies in front of me and behind me, and like, the ramp's open. Let's go.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it's not a unique way to start the sport, but having gone out a little bit beforehand and getting the taste for it before you actually started the course, leading into obviously what's now a lifestyle for you, looking back must be pretty cool that that's how it got started and that you were that stoked at the beginning.
Oh yeah. I've tell people all the time, if I would have discovered skydiving before joining the military, I would have never joined the military.
Yeah. That's my only regret ever in the sport, is that I didn't start like 10 years earlier.
Oh yeah. Oh,
that was it.
It's the best when you get a tandem and they're, 40, 50, 60, whatever age, like well, now I guess I'm in that category, but an older person, and they're like, I can't believe I waited to do this. And it's, skydiving is giving a lot of great lessons, but those are little reminders of like, if you got a little inkling somewhere, just go for it. Like,
that was one of the gifts that skydiving gave to me, is because I started working so early on, shooting video and then doing tandems, that I got to hear people in their 40s and 50s expressing that over and over and over again. And even as I started at 26, even as a 27, 28-year-old, I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm so lucky. How many times can you hear you have the best job in the world before you start to really believe it?
Yeah.
And it really is,
Oh, that's the part. Like, and it really is like, when you get to experience people's first or one and only, or that overcome, what just came to mind is getting to take, oh man, this guy was a monster. Like 6'4", 260. No, I don't think he couldn't have been that big. 240, 250 ish.
Yeah.
He was a big boy, like jacked out. He was a corrections officer. We had been trying to get him on the tandem, but
Oh, I think we lost you there. Oh,
are
there
we
we go.
back?
Yeah, I got you back.
Okay. Yeah, he was a big boy, and we had been working through it, and so like it was just me and him in a 206 and our camera guy. But to get him out that door, I was like, well, if he chooses not to go, like we're just not going. Like we're done. And the whole way up, he was working through so many demons, like full breath work, just breathing, concentrating, like eyes closed. You'd open them up for a sec and be like, nope, that was a bad idea. And then come back in and start breathing. And I was like, oh. And trying to get this guy geared up was so hard. I was like, okay, like this is what's up. Like, let's go. And got him out the door. He did everything. We got everything worked out. It was brilliant. Like I went for a ride. I didn't do shit. I was a little friggin' turtle on his back. Like, all right, we're having fun. Like, I guess I'll do the things I need to do, but like I'm not in charge. And we get down and just he was crying. He was working through his demons. We were connecting about mental health stuff already. And like, it was a really amazing release for him. And we get to be part of that. And if we're present enough that we're able to experience, like, fuck, there's so many lessons involved in understanding ourselves and connection. Like,
oh yeah, man.
That's that.
It's and I've said it before on the show. I've taken people that will never remember a thing about me. They won't be able to pick me out of a lineup. They don't know my name. Some of them probably don't even know if it was a dude or a girl that took them. But every one of them remembers the experience, and knowing that you were able to give that to somebody, no matter how anonymous you end up being, it's just such an incredible privilege. It really is. So
we're forever attached.
Oh yeah, man. So you start out the jumping in the military. How does it progress from there? Because obviously military jumping and civilian jumping are pretty different.
Horribly. It progresses horribly. Tempo is, especially in the military, is just through the roof. So it probably took me another 3 years because I started only 2 and a bit. So I started in 2000 at the end of 2003, and my contract in the infantry ended in 2005. And so I had a year where I was rethinking life and trying to go back to school, and Afghanistan for Canada wasn't what Afghanistan became. And so I was like, well, why am I in the infantry if I'm not going to do my job? And so finally I got my A license and about 100 jumps. So it took me a few years to get, like, the ejection was there, but just, I think I had maybe 2-3 jumps in 2 years. Wow. Leading until I got out. And then I got into it and started jumping and working and navigating gear finally. But then I ended up getting back into the military, this time picking a trade. And then it was just like on weird little spots. Like I'd get to, get a weekend away, and maybe I was doing like 30 jumps in a year. After Afghanistan, actually during Afghanistan, I had brought my skydive equipment with me, or my parents shipped it to me. I have no idea. But I ended up deploying to Afghanistan in 2008. And for the Canadian crew, we get leave throughout. So some people are lucky and they get it right in the middle, which was me. And other people get it like a month in. They're like, well, here's your vacation. Now you're hooping the rest of the time. And so I went to Europe, and that was my first time leaving North America to skydive and meeting and jumping like in Emporia Brava, and then met some people there, and they're like, well, you should go to this boogie in France. And it's like military training facility, but once or twice a year they would open it up for boogies, and like everything was covered, like all the coaches, I remember I was jumping with, I want to get it right, Tim Porter, but at the time the guy had like 20,000 skydives already.
Sure.
and he's just a sky god, and we're jumping and he's talking to me about stuff, and I'm like, man, so like you've done this so many times, like what's your favorite part of skydiving? And it still sits with me, and it's still true today, is every jump I learn something.
Mm.
And I was like, it's the growth thing. And so that was a great, I think I did like 50 jumps on that trip, and so I was just in heaven. And then, coming back and forth, the military, everything was a little slow up until I got out of the military, was able to actually take time and work at drop zones and start building, like getting my AFF and my TI stuff. And like,
sure. What an odd route to making it to your first like proper jump session via Afghanistan to Spain and France. I mean, Jesus Christ.
I was trying to get some of the helo guys in Afghanistan. I was like, man, if you could get me to 3,000 feet, like I'll jump out here. And I was dumb enough to do it. It just, the back of my brain was like, man, one of these guys, like, they're going to see you parachute in. They're not going to have a friggin' clue what's going on. Like, you might get your ass shot. You're dark enough that like you could get shot doing this for sure. Like, for sure I was going to get in trouble. And by then I was starting to like, I wanted to take a different route with my military career, but like, man, I was thinking about it real hard.
I have to say, out of all the bandit jumps that I've ever been told of, jumping out of helo in Afghanistan as a bandit jump has got to be, how can I put this, the fucking stupidest bandit jump I've ever heard of. Holy shit.
You survive things long enough, and you're like I remember when I first got off the airplane in Spain, I kissed the ground. I was so thankful to be alive and to have both my legs that, like, man, I was pretty stoked. And I didn't realize how heavy that feeling was, but like, yeah, out there, dudes were just getting blown up all the time, right? Like that was the daily. So even on that leave, like I was eating all the great spots I could. First time I actually had 2 cents to rub together. So I was making sure I was eating good food and doing the things I wanted, renting ridiculous cars. Cause again, it's not the same when you're like, you don't, I don't know. There's just something about being able to drive a car with all your body in one piece.
Yeah.
And so, but that was such an extreme thought to have as a child. Like, I think at the time I was probably 20. I think I was 25, 2008, even number. Yeah, I was 25. But you're still a child. Like I still don't know how the world works. Like the military was still putting money in my account. I was like, oh, look, this created, I'll go spend it. Like, yeah, I didn't have I didn't fully understand it all, but.
Well, at that age too, I mean, to come face to face with your own mortality in such a graphic way in a place like Afghanistan, I can't even begin to fathom. And I mean, spend any length of time in the sport and you come face to face with death 1 or 2 times, but at that age and with the odds kind of stacked against you getting out of there in one piece, it's got to be obviously a release the instant you're away from that.
Oh, you feel alive.
Oh,
like you're thankful and you just want to get after. But then there's also like a weird emotional nonsense thing where you're also super angry and you're super frustrated. So you want to be alive, but you're angry with everybody and everything. And like, it's hilarious. It's a bit of a joke.
It's got to be the mental gymnastics that you have to do to just keep yourself as sane as possible, or go crazy and not let anybody else see it.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think just getting after a lot of sports, trying to be super busy, not wanting to be still is how most of us deal. And skydiving was a phenomenal Band-Aid for a lot of years. You have to be present, right? Like you jump, you're about to jump. There's stuff that you got to do on the jump. You want to get better. So even if your brain is trying to take you 1,000 different ways, for 40 seconds of that skydive, because even then, for a while that was like, man, if you heard my GoPro, I would rage if somebody was doing the wrong thing or forgetting the plan but it was still fun. And so even at the door for that let's say anywhere from 10 seconds to the full minute of free fall, you were present. The noise in your head, your bills, your dealings with your spouse or your significant, like whatever, PTSD, all that, none of it mattered. You were in this moment.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the most incredible gift that skydiving gives to a lot of veterans and a lot of people in general. Like, you can escape it all and just be here.
Sure.
But the reason I call it the Band-Aid is because you're only dealing with the symptoms. You're not going down into the core of, well, why do I feel this way? And so
Sure.
I remember traveling for quite a bit after that to do like trips wherever I could to feel better, not realizing that you're trying to run away from your head and you're bringing it along with you. So
Sure.
not a great race that you're going to win.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's similar for anybody that's been in the sport for any length of time. You get started in it, and it's so all encompassing that nothing else exists. And then nothing else exists during the jump. The rest of the world, the volume gets turned down a little bit, maybe the day that you're out jumping. But if you spend a couple days away from the drop zone, everything starts pissing you off again, and you got to go back for that next fix. But I remember the first time I took a break from skydiving was when I was in free fall, actively angry about something that had happened during the day. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is now I'm being dangerous because I'm not here. And if I don't do the right things, I'm a fucking dead man. And that's when you kind of go, oh shit. All right, maybe I have some issues I got to work out.
Yeah. No, that's what I've like. The longer the trips were, eventually my brain would catch up, and I'd be, like I said, you hear in my GoPro, I'd be cursing people out, like, what the fuck? Just
Right.
losing my mind. Under canopy, if somebody cut me off, I was like, you just ruined my swoop. Like,
Right.
that was a huge part of my sky. And like, dude, that is not why you're skydiving. Like,
Right.
it's
Right.
like, we're talking about the fact that the jet's here, and you're like, well, do you want to postpone and change it? I'm like, oh, I'm one thing at a time. And I could feel a little angst when I was like getting out to Paris here, and I was like, oh, do I join? And I was like, Carlo, no, like, there's a reason that you and I connected. There's a reason that we set the time and date, because I was the one that set the time and date.
Right.
It's all good. Like,
I'll tell you what, though, that it takes an incredible amount of self-reflection, though, to get to that point, though, right? I mean, it's very easy to walk around not really understanding why you're doing anything or why something's pissing you off. But it sounds to me like you took a lot of time to be able to self-evaluate and start kind of taking account of how you wanted things to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, symptoms. I was always dealing with symptoms, and they would, no matter what, like, you think you're not going to be angry when you're in Italy having an amazing coffee and a fantastic pasta, or you're traveling, like when I was married, I'm out with my wife and we're biking through France, like, but yeah, you get angry and you're constantly dealing, or I'd be jumping and I'm cursing somebody out, where now I'm out here messing up skydives because I know it's hilarious. Like, we'll plan something, and that's the Carlo jump. I'll plan like a nice little two-way with someone, and then I tackle them out of the plane, and we just start wrapping around each other and and the smiles on both of us are just ridiculous once they clue into what just happened, and we're just having a blast. So the zoo of it going nuts was the fun part.
Sure.
But because I needed everything to be perfect, because this was my jump to feel good, and oh fuck, man, I had to let go of that attachment of outcome. But the mental health side, yeah, that's been a journey in its own. But yeah, so much thank you for it.
Do you think the anger portion of things stems from your experiences in the military, or is that just kind of you as a person? Because I'm like grumpy, angry dude, and I don't have any major traumatic experiences to look back on,
That's not fair to say. You might.
True.
Because it's a buildup, right? Like, life's always happening to us as a kid. Let's be very realistic. Everything's traumatic as fuck. Like, you don't have a clue. My mom held me back in the third grade because I was just learning English. And that language is fucking ridiculous, and it's got exceptions to everything. And Spanish is, this is the word, this is how you say the letters, this is what it is, and maybe there's a couple of things, but that's that.
Right.
And so the school, and I had dyslexia plus ADD, so the school didn't really know. So my mom was like, perfect, we'll hold him back a grade and he'll catch up, instead of what the school said, he'll eventually he'll figure it out.
Sure.
And she wasn't good with that. Now, I took that as to be, my mom doesn't love me unconditionally. Like, I have to perform, I have to be X in order to get love. And I'm also not good enough for my mother. Like,
Sure.
that's a deep one. Mushrooms got me there, by the way. Mushrooms are awesome.
Yes, they are.
In the proper setting. Set and setting does make a big difference.
A lot of the way that you come across definitely says, I've looked inside. and it's tough to do that without that stuff. It really is.
No, I did all the therapy stuff, and the military sends you, and luckily that was my real first experience with therapy. Is I went to a military clinic, and so they're not out to get money. They have a salary. They're here to treat me and focus on that. And so I was able to see what a structure, like, you're on this program. This is your diagnosis. This is the treatment method that works for your diagnosis. This is the program. Here's the timeline. Here's the start date. It's going to end in about a year and a half. And that's how long, like, cognitive behavioral therapy or EMDR or ART, like any of those things, like, there's a start and finish. And so I did that, and, like, yeah, you feel better. I talked about the stuff I could remember from Afghanistan, the different scenarios that happened, like when my friend killed himself. Like, I knew those things because those were there. But mushrooms take you where you need to go. They take you back to when you're 3 years old, and you're like, holy shit, like, my growing up in the Dominican Republic was all fun and rainbows, but I also cried a lot. There was also trauma happening. I was crashing into, like, I am the son of a motocross guy and a rally car driver. Like, we crashed into stuff. I got toys and I was allowed to explore. So, like, you don't register all that stuff. So when the therapist is talking to me about stuff, I'm answering the questions of the surface.
Sure.
So that's why when I said, when you're like, oh, I didn't, I was like, well, you don't have a clue, man. There's some stuff.
It's very true. Well, and the benefit to something like the therapy that you can do with psilocybin, whether it's in a proper setting or it's just you and friends being responsible about it, shall we say, you don't just remember the event. You remember how you felt during the event. You remember the motivations during the events, which can be huge. Because, I mean, how many people have blamed themselves for this, that, or the other thing? And when you really dig into the memory, you're like, oh, no, that wasn't my fault. I didn't cause this, or I didn't do that. And it can be a life-changing revelation, just on one little basic thing.
Yeah. I caused my parents' divorce. I was the problem. I didn't behave exactly how they wanted me to fucking behave.
Sure.
We as human beings will take fault and shame and guilt for anything and everything. And that's, again, I don't know, it's part of the human condition. We're the most important people on the planet, or the most important individual on the planet.
Right.
I can influence everything and nothing all at once.
I am the center of my own universe. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Now, do you think that we talked about the jump itself kind of pulling you out of troubles and bringing you into the moment, but how was the community of skydiving? I'm assuming it did wonders as well.
Oh, that community. My first boogie. So always, skydiving was always fun. People take you under their wing. I had great mentors due to the drop zone. And, people see you, you're that high energy. Like, we see me or a version of me in every new jumper. They're out there. They want to free fly, because I was the latest, right? Want to free fly. And they have no idea how to fucking do any of that shit, but they want to jump out. And people are like, hey, why don't you just slow it down? Like, let's get you to learn this. Maybe learn your canopy an insane amount before you go wanting to down. Like, you see the impetuousness of youth, the ignorance of youth, really the joy. And they see when they start bringing you in and kind of molding you and figuring out. So, like, there's so much friendship connections, but mentorship. Like you can go there and like you have guides, like guides for life kind of thing, but guides in skydiving. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I remember going to my first boogie, and it was Christmas Invasion at Z Hills. Oh no, Canadian Invasion, but it's a Christmas. $20 bill Canadian got you on the airplane. And it was my first time really seeing the live your life, man. Whatever is you, be you. Like the craziness at night there, the dress up. And I was like, this is a place where you can let your freak flag fly and no one cares.
Yep.
You're just doing you. And we all have the same desire to hopefully not be too hungover in the morning and then go jump again and repeat. And I think in that little micro space of our existence, you just get to see that. And most people, you know, if we can bear it down, everyone wants the same thing: food, air, shelter, water, and security. But how we get to it is so different that on a big scale, on a community scale, we get all weird and squirrely, and then we judge and do all the crap. But like on a skydive scale, it's so small that you do see the goal, which is jump out of that airplane and do it again as many times as possible.
Yeah.
And how you do it or whatever, nobody's judging. Like, I remember hearing the orgies and stuff and doing like seeing people run around. I'm packing a parachute again. At this point, what year was that? Yeah, it would have been like early 20s. I was a square. Like I didn't do any drugs. I didn't do nothing. I played sports. I didn't do any homework because that was not a thing. But then I joined the military. So it was like and I remember unpacking my parachute and I turned my head and there's a naked girl talking about her skydive just in the packing area. And I'm just like, okay, that's we're eye level right now. Like, that's just it. Like nobody cared. And it was just fun. And she didn't give a shit about it. And like, I love that. That was that experience, or like, you know, seeing people dressing up and whatever, they're like, it's fun. You see the joy of life.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, beside the incredible welcomeness in the community itself, there's a certain feeling that comes over you when you realize you're never going to be the weirdest one in the room. And it's because, you know, you go out in the real world, and I was always the one that kind of stood out, not necessarily in a good way from the crowd, because I just said whatever was on my mind or did whatever I was thinking. But on a drop zone, no, you are never the wildest one. You are, maybe they're holding it in, and there's an incredible amount of freedom in knowing that. There really is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're one of many enjoying, but nobody's judging you.
Yeah.
Like I thought this up the other day, is when I was younger, I didn't want to fit in. That's what we were doing. We were trying to fit in, and it was weird and scary and fucked up. Make sure I don't make the wrong joke. And I got to go memorize the Nirvana CD. Cause like, if I don't know all the songs in order, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was Smashing Pumpkins was a big one, like making sure I memorized. Cause like, that's what my friends were talking about. So I like the music, but like you asked me to name you a song, and like I can name one right now that I like the new stuff I'm listening, because I don't care. Like it's on the radio and I'm enjoying it. Good enough.
Yeah. And
so you're trying to fit into whatever, like skateboarding. Like I said, I got into skateboard. It's fun enough to go to A to B, but I'm not going to sit there. Like it's not my passion, but I wanted to fit in. So it wasn't that we wanted to fit in, it's that we wanted to be accepted.
Sure.
We wanted to be ourselves and be accepted for who we are. And in skydiving, like, unless you're an asshole, that's exactly it. Whatever turns you want to dress up and wear heels and walk around at night, fucking A. You want to, you know, be chilled out and like read your books in between jumps, get after it. Like, it is such an accepting of who you are, not of any, like, you gotta fit in here. You gotta like man, I'm still chatting with like belly flyers that somehow, well, COVID, I think, right after we just ended up traveling to all the same spots. Massive age difference, massive lifestyle difference. And yet every time we see each other, it's like, oh man, it's you again. Like, how are you? But and it's just, it is that
Oh
you
yeah,
you get to be accepted for who you are and at any drop zone. Like
sure.
that's a gift.
Well, it's a worldwide community, which is, I was lucky enough to learn that very early on in my time in the sport, because, of course, in the States, the whole world comes to the US just for all the different great places to jump weather-wise and everything. And so I was working with 1 out of 10 people that I worked with was an American. Everyone else was from somewhere else. And all of a sudden you find out that there's so many cool things going on around the whole rest of the world. And there's drop zones here and there and amazing people all over the place. And you're like, fuck, this is a teeny little tribe, but it's kind of big too. Like
Oh yeah.
there's a lot out there. Now, what drove you? What was the decision behind deciding you wanted to instruct and get into kind of the working side of the sport?
Uh, just to help out a club outside of my hometown in Hamilton. There was a little club out there, and yeah, it was just trying to keep this thing going and try to see if it could grow. And I've always enjoyed coaching and mentoring. It's a lot of fun. You get to, like, now I see all the extras, but originally it was very much, I want to be more versatile for my club. And it's the natural progression kind of thing. Like, it's a bit of a challenge. Then I got hooked on it because, man, you meet a lot of weirdos and it's fun. It's the best. And it, like, you know, I say that I'm not artistic. I'm not creative. Like, you should see how long it takes me to come up with like a canopy pattern. Like, it's atrocious how long it works. But when you're interacting with someone as an instructor, you have to learn what their motivators are, what their learning style is, how I teach, and how to change that for them, because it's not about me. And then you're kind of growing together and you're building that connection. And so it allows me to find that creative, like, okay, they're not catching on. Like, we've talked about this, something's missing. Or most of it, honestly, it's mental health coaching.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you jumped out, or dudette, you just jumped out of an airplane for the first time. I am stoked. I'm your instructor. And I'm like, that was excellent. How was the jump? And they're like, whoa, I screwed this up and this. I'm like, whoa. What? You just jumped out of an airplane and you flew your own parachute to the ground. Like, that was incredible. And you see like the performance anxiety and the weird stuff that goes in, and the expectations unrealistic as all. Because then I have to come down and be like, dude, when have you ever been in a small aircraft before? Maybe your tandem.
Yeah.
Well, never. Okay. Well, how in that tandem, did you have a parachute or did your instructor? Well, he did. I was like, so this is your first time with a parachute of your own that you were going to have to fly. And like, you were on your own. Like, yeah, we were there, but what happens if we like lose you on exit or something? Like, you're on your own. Or when your parachute deploys, you're going to be on your own. Like, this is an insane amount of first. And you're worried because you put your left hand lower than your right hand.
Right.
Or, you know, I had to give you the legs out symbol 1,000,000 times because you don't know what that feels like. So you do the thing I told you to do, and then they came right back up your butt. Like,
Yep.
That's, you know, I get so excited when I talk about this. I try to explain it to them. I'm like, look, on the first jump, let's be very realistic. I just hope you get to the door, because then for sure we're going. I don't care if you do the count or not, because if I'm on the outside, I'm ripping you out. And if I'm on the inside, I'm taking you out.
Yeah.
So we're going. Don't you worry about this. You're getting into free fall. We're going to be holding on to you. We're going to give you some instructions. As long as you somewhat understand that this means something, and you kind of react to it, I am super stoked. And like, if check your altimeter, because I need you to, like, that's the big one. I need you to have some muscle memory that this thing on your wrist is a thing you got to look at. The chances of you actually reading it are slim to none, but I want you to look at it. And then, you know, hopefully you deploy, but at the very least, you recognize that there's a thing you got to do and you start reaching for it. I was like, for me, that's an incredibly successful skydive. Like, that's the standard you got to achieve for me, especially if on the next one you actually do deploy your own. Then I'm like, well, the first one we're good. Like, we're laughing. Let's.
Sure.
So there's a lot happening. Enjoy it. The more I can get you to enjoy and relax, the more like you will actually feel when I'm cranking on your arm. You'll realize like, oh, I'm supposed to do something with this hand as opposed to, oh, like, oh, I'm strong.
Sure. Well, that's a huge part about the psychology behind it, right? The being able to be a chameleon of a teacher to find out what works for your student. And I always jokingly call it, as a tandem instructor, being a 20-minute psychologist, because you have 20 minutes from the time you meet them to figure out how to get a perfect stranger to trust you enough to throw them the fuck out of an airplane, and it's fun to do. I remember having an AFF student that was, bar none, the worst first jump I'd ever been on. Nicola Martinez, he's a great buddy of mine, and now he's a very successful skydiver and base jumper and all this, but it was horrible. Threw the reserve out the door, threw me as the primary 2 or 3 times. He was much lighter than me and just got away from me. And so I'm below him, trying to look up, pointing my finger, going, fuck, just pull. And he pulled. And he landed his parachute, and he was beating himself up about how bad the jump was. And I walked up to him, gave him a hug, and said, I will jump with you 3 times a day, every fucking day, no matter what. That was awesome. And he's like, what do you mean? This was wrong and that was wrong. I'm like, you fucking pulled. That means you get to do it the next time. Man, bravo. And I was so proud of him, because you could see he was beating himself up. And then he walked away from it going, I did do that, didn't I? It was great.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
You skydived. Like, and the best part about right after we get them to their A, they're going to go do zoo dives and jump around with their friends. And that, like, the moment you get, even the moment I got to be unstable on exit, the next exits were like, a lot of mine were Cessnas, was on the strut, push back, go into a cannonball, and just start tumbling.
Yep.
That was incredible. Okay, well, I'll do that from the front. And you just realize, like, wait, I was fighting so hard to get stable. And then I was like, oh, yeah, but no matter what, if I just do this arch thing, I'll get to belly to earth. Yep. And, like, then I'll do all the boring stuff, I guess.
I remember at one point in skydiving, hitting the milestone where I realized that. And then as you get, a few thousand jumped into it, realizing that if somebody blindfolded you and threw you out of an airplane, you'd instantly be flying, because you just know the air. And I remember it almost being a sad realization. I'm like, oh, it used to be so fucking exciting when I didn't know if I was going to make it back onto my belly. You get that thrill and those butterflies. And then eventually you're like, oh, fuck, man, come on. I can only get unstable for so long.
Yeah. Now I get dizzy, and that doesn't feel good. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Now, hey, when we first talked about having you on the show, you were telling me you're quite the nomad and you're bouncing around all over the place. Right now, you're in Paris Valley, and I'm listening to the planes go overhead, and I'm jealous because I know those birds pretty well. But you said you're trying to get as many wingsuit jumps in as you can because you're getting ready to go do a base course. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I've gotten away from wingsuiting. Just, oh man. Once you start playing with canopies, like, oh, it's so much fun. And then you get to instruct and you get to play with the canopies. So it's like, I'm doing my base wingsuit course, which has been a big thing on my list for as long as I've been wingsuiting, really. So I'm going to go out with Joe Webb and get out to Notch Peak in Utah. And so, I'm down here and just putting the wingsuit on and just getting going and getting really comfortable in the sky and back, like, current with the wing. So that way, just, maximize my safety and joy. When I'm on the exit, I only need to think about the exit.
Sure.
I know how to fly a wingsuit, and I know how to deploy a wingsuit, and I know how to land a wingsuit. Sure. So I just want to take all those factors out now, knowing, and, be somewhat of use some of that wisdom that, we all talk about building.
Sure. I've had Nicholas Scalabrino and Matt Munting on the show quite a few times, and one of the biggest things that they would always talk about was how invaluable jumping out of an airplane in a wingsuit and flying the fuck out of it in every orientation is if you're going to go base jump with it, because by the time they're stepping off that cliff, just like you said, flying the wingsuit is the last thing they need to think about because it's so ingrained in what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be unconscious competent. Like that's
It's a good way to put it. I like that.
yeah. Well,
like
it's,
that.
it's I read that, and actually shared that with my AFFI facilitator, and he's now added that to his thing is, there's a level of ability once you don't have to think about it that you can, your awareness goes, like the same thing we said with tandems, that they're not going to remember jack shit because they don't have a clue. Like they're just feeling all of it. And now it's a space where, and the technology, like I'm on a Freak 2 still. I was just flying with a Freak 5 and a Creature 2. And these guys, like, remember the Top Gun movie, or the Top Gun, the first?
Oh yeah.
When he's looking at it and like it's just a hornet's nest. He's like, no, it's no good. It's no good. And he pulls away. That's what, I've experienced that a couple times with like Andy Farrington and the crew up in Kapowsin. And then the Red Bull guys, I got to chase them once in Panama, and I was like, oh, like you just see them going, and I'm like, I want to get in, but like, sweet Joe, no, this is these guys. And so I was seeing that happening with these guys yesterday, and I was just like, I want to get involved, but like they're just spinning and tossing, and they'll slow down for a second, hit the gas, and the technology that's coming out, like the squirrel suits are just so incredible that I am so far behind on my Freak 2, but at least I know my Freak 2 that I'll toss it around and do all that stuff. So I'm happy that that's what I'm doing on. But yeah, seeing what those guys are capable of, and just
nowadays, and I'm not a wingsuit flyer, but it seems to me that nowadays the mentality with wingsuits is a lot like the mentality with canopies, and only progressing when you're ready, because they're not jumpsuits anymore. They're fucking little fighter jets you're climbing into. And it's insane to watch. I mean, I've been privileged enough to fly some of the world's best wingsuiters to altitude and roll the wings over and chase them down a bit, watching the shit that they're doing. And it's just mind blowing. You watch what they're doing going, oh my God, that's not possible. That was the shit that they thought would never happen only 10 years ago, so it's mental. It's mental.
Well, and that's the part of, I remember when I first started, it was kind of cowboyish, like, oh, you guys are flying big suits, I got to get to a big suit. And they were trying to implement the, no, like, let's slow it down. Get comfortable on one. And it's the same theory as a canopy. Get super comfortable on one. So you're very aware. And then we add, what's a little bigger suit, and we'll add a little bit more speed and a little bit more, but you just update the data for the baseline.
Sure.
And now, push that 10 years later or more, and it really is like, I'm not seeing people in a hurry to get to a bigger suit. Like,
sure,
man, an ATC, whatever number they're on, is a beast. It'll outfly the hell out of my suit. And back in the day, like, we were talking about getting onto like I think at the time it was a P2, like a Phoenix Fly whatever 2. And, Buddy was telling me like, yeah, that's a beginner suit now, but, even 5 years before that, that was the biggest suit. So like, chill. And you see the wisdom and the knowledge is being passed down to the people doing it now, that they are taking their time. There is a desire. There's always the kids that want to get bigger, faster, and
sure,
it's the same as can't. But seeing the way that it's being done, I'm like, it's pretty neat to watch. Direction.
Well, and the mentality behind it has changed so much too, because I actually had the squirrel guys on a couple years back, and I likened wingsuiting to when snowboarding first came out, because I'm a skier. I've always been on sticks, not on a board. And when snowboarding first happened, it was get off my fucking mountain, mowing down all the moguls, assholes, and just degenerates. And now, of course, it's an incredibly well-respected, legitimate sport in its own, and everybody's learned to coexist. But it was the same with wingsuits, fucking up jump runs and all over the place. Never know what's going to happen. And now, of course, it's grown, and the mentality is so much more. I don't want to use the word professional, but it's just gone in such a safety-oriented direction that now it's again cohabitating, and now XRW and all the shit that's going on, man, it's mental.
Well, I remember in 2005 watching, I want to say Purple Mike. And man, that dude never landed on. Like, you weren't wrong when you said wing shooters, like, they land off. It was like, yeah, 100%. That dude's stoke was through the roof, and he'd get out, and like navigation, even at that point, wasn't a thing. Like at Z Hills, like, he just flew whatever direction they were going, and at some point they're like, oh crap, we can better turn back, and now they're way too far back.
Yeah.
But like, I just remember in 05 thinking, wingsuiters, yeah, okay, they're kind of nutty. And then fast forward to whenever I did mine, and it was like, very much harping on navigation. And then I knew, like, no, I want to make it back to the drop zone.
Sure.
But yeah, it's hilarious. Like, but
one, it went very much from a lone wolf part of the sport to now being very much a community part of the sport. Like when I was still flying full time, I would rarely see a solo wingsuiter. They were always with someone. They were always doing something. Whereas back in the day, it was maybe one wingsuiter on a load, and that was the wingsuiter at the drop zone. Right. Yeah. He was the dude with a wingsuit. Nobody had any idea what he was doing. All you saw was a forward facing video of the landscape because there were no GoPro 360s and all that shit, So wingsuiting always looked so boring because all I ever saw was, okay, there's the cornfield that I fly over every day. That doesn't look so, and now it's night and day different.
Oh, it's like I said, that hornet's nest that I was watching, the grin on my face was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was just, wow. Like, just wow.
Yeah.
And then in that same load, there was 5 wingsuiters, 2 solos, one in a smaller suit figuring some stuff out, and then one person doing like performance, like just getting numbers dialed in, wanting to be safe for base, understanding glide paths and like ratios. It was just, it's all of it now.
Yeah.
Like it's but that's the sport, right? Like angle flying. Now we got the mutant harnesses really becoming a thing. Like, this is where skydiving just doesn't stop. It keeps evolving. It keeps growing. No matter how many jumps you have, there's another thing that somebody else is creating that's coming up with something that, like,
sure,
I'm excited to see where it goes in the next 20 some odd years. Like,
sure. Well, and another really cool thing that I've noticed, especially over maybe the last 10 years in the sport, social media, for all its good and bad, has done some incredible things in the sport for just worldwide communication. Beside the fact that I keep track of skydiving friends that I would never otherwise be able to talk to if it weren't for fucking Facebook and Instagram, and the fact that I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it weren't for something like that. It allows us to really push out not just the training, but the mentality of skydiving. And like, I'm glad that you brought it up early on in the podcast, the mental health aspect of just life in general, and especially for military men. I've had a bunch on the show who have been very forthcoming in talking about stuff as important as mental health is. And it's conversations like this where you see people that you wouldn't think would otherwise share something like that are really willing to put themselves out there because they know how much it helps somebody else. And that's part of the community that I've seen grow that just it's wonderful to see happen.
I've been fighting this entire podcast to hijack it and just talk about mental health.
No.
That's what I totally, like, I stopped drinking in 2015 and stopped drinking. I'll have a drink here and there, but like, I just don't drink. Like, that's a thing.
Sure.
But when I'm around the crew, first thing is they want to go to a bar, they want to have some beers. And the easiest way back in 2015, and the catalyst was my buddy killing himself, was I want you to know that it's okay to not be okay. Like, I was staying in my, like, I bought a house in the mountains. I was staying in my little thing, and I was like, that's not good enough. And so you go to a bar and they're like, hey man, like, what do you want to drink? Nothing for me, just sparkling water. Oh, like you don't drink? No, I don't. Instantly, like if they offered me heroin or cocaine and I was like, no, I don't want to do it, I'd be like, yeah, okay, fair enough, you don't want to do it. Alcohol though, they're like, what's going on, man? Like, how come you don't drink anymore?
Have you got a problem?
You know what, dude? I suffer from PTSD and depression, so alcohol is a depressant, so I don't drink. And either instantly in that moment we start going down the path, or 5 to 10 minutes later, you know, when they're ruminating with like what I just said, and then the conversation will get going.
Sure.
It's fantastic. And that's what I use, because I knew the moment that you turn down a drink as a veteran or as just an adult, people are like, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's
what's happening?
It's too also, if you're talking about the picture that most people have of the military mentality, and then superimpose that into a fucking potentially macho sport like skydiving, and mental health is something that people just wouldn't talk about forever. And it's been the last few years that I've seen that be now a much more comfortable conversation to have. And I can understand why it's a difficult conversation to have in something like skydiving, because, I mean, look what we put on the line every day that we go out to jump. And as a tandem instructor or an AFF instructor or a pilot, nobody wants to go out and go, oh, this guy's dealing with PTSD or this or that or the other thing, not realizing that what causes the most damage is not fucking talking about it.
Yeah. Oh, being isolated, feeling alone. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's massive. And here in Paris, I remember reading the article probably like 12 years ago. I don't know, it was a minute ago. But they talked about how veterans were using skydiving to help them deal with PTSD. And I was like, yeah, 100%. So now I've been like, I'm an athlete for Cleared Hot Dudes, and it's a Canadian company that sells t-shirts and like clothing, lifestyle. But their whole thing is they don't actually take a paycheck from it. They take all the money that they make, because he's still serving, or they're still serving, and they take all the money and they put it back in, to the point that we had a veteran boogie last year in Eloy in October, and we were able to get 55 guys out and a full day of jumping for free.
That's so
and
awesome.
This year, and that was fantastic, because I don't know how, but those idiots, well, not those idiots, I did train him, so he's not dumb, but he let me take a Jeep out of an airplane. Like, I got to hit one of those milestones as a skydiver of like, I took a vehicle out of an aircraft, and with that, we were able to generate the content that then sold enough stuff to get guys out. Well, now we've proved the concept. This year we're doing it again. The boogie will be in November. And the goal is to get 2 days attack time fully covered for the jumpers, and get some tandems partnering up with some different organizations to get ill and injured guys out, women too. And then that's the goal, is to double the amount of people that we can impact, with the whole purpose being, we got to get you out of your house. We got to get you moving again and interacting with the community. Like, one of the hardest things that happened is when I left the military, I did go to the mountains. Like, I went to a small town and I lived on the outskirts of that small town. Oof, that is, to go from your best friends, brothers, to nothing, to no interaction, to no, like, you're just in your own head. Like, man, that's the 22 a day started coming out around that time. And then when my friend killed himself, then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm talking. Jesse killed himself in February of 15. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, he's a sniper. He's loved. He's a dude. Like, there's no way that guy couldn't have asked for help and somebody wouldn't have helped him. Like, he had his demons, he had shit going, but like, there's help out there. And so by connecting, by talking, it really does. And everyone's dealing with something. Like,
oh, sure.
You don't get through life unscathed.
Hell no.
It's so easy to focus on the military. And I'm thankful for that. I used to hate the spotlight. Now I love it. because it makes it okay for me to say I'm not okay.
Sure.
And then as I do that, like I was at a university where they were doing like an entrepreneur thing for veterans. So there was like 30 of us, and the kids that were in business school, they were helping us like how to use social media, how to organize, how to do all that, like the structured stuff.
Sure.
And so I went and told them like, well, I'm not really sure why, I don't want a business. I just want to start a charity, and I just want to spread the word of how to use therapy correctly. If you're in therapy for 7 years and like it's not getting better, I was like, that's probably not the right scenario. Like there's a start and an end date. And as I was sharing, I let loose on what was going on with me. And 2 days later, one of the girls comes up to me and she's like, hey, like, can I talk to you? And I was like, sure, what's up? And right away, it's going deep the moment they look down. And I was like, oh, that's what we're talking about. All right, cool. Let's hear it. She's like, well, I'm not a soldier. And then right away, well, I'm not a soldier. And again, comparing stuff, I was like, I wanted to hug her right then and there.
Right.
I was like, hey, keep going. She's like, but, I got diagnosed with PTSD. And again, she was like, but I'm not a soldier. I didn't. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to give you a lecture just yet. Keep going. And then she's like, and I was like, okay, can I ask what happened? She's like, oh, I was in a car accident. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty traumatic. What happened? She's like, well, it rolled and we ended up I've rolled a few times and we ended up upside down. I was like, Jesus, that sounds very stressful. And she's like, yeah. When did it happen? Oh, like 2 years ago. I was like, oh yeah. So it sounds like it was post-traumatic stress. She's like, well, yeah. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you don't have to be life is constantly happening.
Sure.
But people are always comparing one to the other. And I was like, and that's where back then I used to say, I just want to hug, I want to headbutt you to reset the clock. And then I want to start with love and give you a big hug and be like, yeah, silly. Like, it's not, PTSD isn't a military issue. It's a life issue.
It's a human issue for sure.
Yeah. And so that really made me want to go even further down this path of healing my own. Like I still got my issues. Like I'm very thankful the way Cola described me to you. And I very much work on that. And I'm very hard on myself when I don't keep that at the forefront. Like when the demons or when somebody's really annoying the shit out of me, like,
yep.
I don't hide it very well. It's just now it's few and far in between now. And but
I mean, the idea has to be you wake up every day, not just telling yourself, but wanting to do even just a little bit better every day, just a little bit, baby 100%. Steps, and it's always, though, it is inspiring to obviously the spotlight, especially with something like PTSD, obviously gets aimed towards the military for various reasons. But I love seeing all the different groups that are going out of their way to try and help, especially the veterans. I just had a gentleman by the name of Andy Van Handel who works with a military group called Hoo-Ha that sponsors veterans to go out and make skydives. And because that can be that headbutt that you're talking about, right? That reset, that, hey, there's something else out there, those little things that can go a long way. And you said you're with Cleared Hot. So that's Andy Stump, yeah?
No, so Andy Stump is Cleared Hot podcast.
Okay.
This guys are TAC P up in Canada, and without them knowing about Cleared Hot, that was their clothing lifestyle brand. So I actually had to reach out to Andy. I fucking fanboyed out on Andy so bad, and it makes him so uncomfortable. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
I ran into him in San Diego somewhere, and he had written up a paper on how to prep for selection. For selection, yeah. So I got given that in Afghanistan by my bosses and a guy that either knew him or knew about the paper and had done and been to JTF2 in Canada. And so I was like, okay, sweet. So I read everything and I was like, perfect. And I went out and trained this way. And then I passed selection and was on course. And so when I saw Andy, I was like, dude, like... And this social media wasn't big for me. So I was just like, I knew his name from this thing that I had read.
Right.
I was like, man, I read your paper and it totally got me through selection. And I was on course and blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, who the fuck are you? And he's a big boy.
All
Who the
right.
fuck are you? And why are you talking to me?
All right.
And then by the end of it, we're just wingsuiting and fucking. I got to do a fly past on the leapfrogs while they're taking the flag, and now that's like a thing. And like I got to do that with them, and I was like, I remember about to do that jump, and I was like, Andy, is it okay that I jump with you? He's like, yeah, I've seen you fly out. Like, you're fine. Come with, like, just follow me. And I was like, dude, you're the fucking coolest. Like, Jesus.
It's so funny that you say he hates people fanboying on him, because he kind of got onto my radar when I listened to him on Rogan. So if he hated fanboying when all he wrote was a paper, after that shit, he must have been going crazy. Like, fuck yeah, that's me. Go away.
Yeah, he's a fucking, yeah. So it was just really neat. So then I have reached out to him, and then I actually saw him in person in Iceland, and was like, hey man, just so you're aware, like, these guys have a clothing company. This is what they're doing. And he's like, yeah, you guys are doing very separate things than me, and like super cool about it. But it was an Air Force guy doing like JTAC stuff, saying this is cleared hot is kind of what the thing is.
Well,
so
that's a military phrase. I mean, you can't.
100%. But I wanted to make sure that there was like no anything, and Andy was super cool about it, and just like, yeah, no, like, you guys are selling clothing, that's not what I do. Whatever.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Yeah, but that is the initial, like, he is that big of a character in our world, and even in the military community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and in kind of pushing for the same things, right? Because I mean, he talked about it a bit on Rogan, and I'm sure he's dove into it in regard to mental health and all the military stuff. And like I said, that conversation is so much wider open than it ever used to be, which is amazing. Now, speaking of, I know you're on your big tour. You're heading to do the base stuff, but you're in Paris now. You've got buddies standing in line to try and get you a slot on the jet. And I'm so jealous. Fuck you if you make it on there, because I lived 2 hours from that place for years and they didn't have it, and I'll never get on that jet. So I hope you get to do it. But I want to ask, for anybody that's listening, while you're out on your vagabond travels, they want to come jump with you. They want to talk mental health. They want to talk about all that kind of stuff, or just make a fun jump and shoot the shit. How do they find you on social media? How can they, kind of track your progress?
Yeah. So on Instagram, Carlo Manuel 11, no S. So that's the easiest one. And then I also have You Are Not Alone Canada, and that's more of the mental health side. So if you don't want to see and, I don't know, listen to my nonsense about the world today, and the mental health side is on You Are Not Alone Canada. Yeah, reach out. I love connecting with people, and I love talking mental health, and I think I've found a genuine path to consistency and finding peace within ourselves. And I think it's totally achievable for anybody to do the moment you make that choice. Like you said, when you wake up in the morning, doing the work it's a choice, but also being stuck in it is a choice. Sure. And anybody who's in that space that's ready to take a step and say, no, like, I want to choose me, and I want to change all this crap, you can. And I am more than happy. And like, that's what I do. Like, I'm in such a fortunate space that I don't have to worry about money, and I just get to interact and share the message as best I can. And one-on-one tends to be, and through word of mouth like this, is the best. Because once you actually see someone living and doing their best and being human, making mistakes, getting angry, but acknowledging it and taking accountability, I think it makes it so much easier than this like idea that you think of, because everyone's pretending for the most part, where nah, man, I'm a fuck up and I love it. Like, I'm the king of failing upwards, because the ego, the way that we think of it, I don't pretend I'm fucking perfect. Like, I'm here to make some mistakes. And when I make them, and I'm super thankful going that special operations route, is I want to know I made the mistake. And I want you to tell me how to fucking make it better. So that way I can advance. And like, yeah, so I'm still learning how to communicate with people on that. Because when people do come to me and they're like, we have peer supports kind of stuff,
Sure.
I'm fucking super direct. I'm an air traffic controller by trade as well. So it's like, oh yeah, some people don't want that truth bomb real quick. That's a little bit too much, but I'm learning how with each person to, how to navigate the conversation. Again, same with like doing AFF.
Sure.
I have to learn the way you learn. But the biggest moment for any of this stuff to happen is that you choose to say, yeah, enough is enough. I want better. And I'm going to put the effort.
Well, and sometimes it's as little as knowing, because if somebody doesn't know you, they just see you on the drop zone and yeah, he seems like a cool guy, but I really could use somebody to talk to about this, that, and the other thing. They might not think of you first unless they're like, no, he's super forward thinking about mental health. And that's when that person can come to you kind of on the sly and go, hey, you got a minute? And it's nice to know, right? Because I mean, especially guys my age and your age as well, 40s, 50s, we're still stuck in that that action hero mentality where guys aren't supposed to have emotions and show that shit and have conversations about it. And it's so nice to know you can kind of get rid of that macho bullshit and actually have a real conversation with somebody.
Oh, the connection is so deep and real when it's on that level.
Oh, yeah.
And this is funny, and I just want to put this on your podcast anyways.
Please.
But just sharing with people, like, talking about high school and all the stupid insecurities, I was like, and I think it's funny when I register this and I said it out loud is, dude, high school for me was terrifying. All I had to do was hide boners all day long. That was the entire time. Everything was like, don't get a boner now. I'm not wearing the right pants. Where do I hide it? And there's no belt. I'm fucked. 5 minutes before the end of class, everything would be fine. And in my brain would be like, don't get one. And I'd look at the clock and all of a sudden like, shit, why? I'm not even thinking. I didn't see anything. What? Now you got to use your books and do. And it's just funny because it's something that we don't talk about, that most men had to fucking deal with that shit.
Yep.
But we never talked about that nonsense.
Yep.
And it's just hilarious. It was like, yeah,
it's that common ground, right? I remember a buddy of mine who, for his own reputation, I won't say it out loud, but he said the funniest fucking thing ever. He's roughly my age as well, and he's like, you've hit middle age when you can't ever leave the bathroom without a pee stain on your pants. And I'm like, and you got to be a middle-aged man to know what the hell that means. Like, yeah, I thought I stopped peeing and then I zipped my pants up. And so, yeah, I fucking pissed my pants laughing. I'm like, holy shit. And it was that common ground, right? You're like, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. And I can't count how many times.
But that's the fucking reality. My buddy said something along those lines to me about like urinals, and he's like, I fucking hate, and I don't know if it's even a psychological thing, but like it always feels like something's getting on your leg and you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
So annoying.
Yeah.
But I never thought to share that. I just thought, and this is the weird isolating factor of the human brain, is we just think we're the only ones dealing with this nonsense. It's like, no, man. Everyone, like, I'll hear a podcast from somebody on the other side of the planet or an Instagram post and be like, holy fuck, that's me. Like, I do that all the time. And now things have changed. You're right. Instagram or social media, for its good or bad, I'm connecting with my buddies on a daily. Like, I got a guy that I deployed with in 2008. He was still infantry. And so like he went back to Edmonton and I went to, cause I got, oh man, that's another day, but I got some funny little stories for my deployment. And we just, you and I can chat about it sometime.
Yeah.
But I went out to the West Coast, and because of being able to get on social media, I haven't seen the guy since 2008, but we're fucking sharing and talking every day, and, sharing rando thought stuff that somebody created on meme on. I'm like, oh yeah, that's 100% accurate. Like, we're both still doing that shit.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's like I've talked shit about. Everybody talks shit about social media. It really has a dark side to it, but the fact is, it's done so much more good in my life than bad, just in connecting me. Like, I got an apology from the girlfriend that dumped me when I went to boot camp 30 years after she dumped me, because we connected on Facebook, and it was the greatest thing ever, because I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know I needed that. You know,
Yeah.
it's fun shit like that. You know, I mean, I think it does an awful lot of good, and it's what has led to being able to do the show and talk to a bunch of jumpers, and again, the podcast is much more about who we are as people that jump out of airplanes than what we do when we jump. I mean, we can talk about that all day too, but I want to know more about who that person on the other side of the plane is. And it's opportunities like this through social media again that got me to sit down and talk to you. And this has been fucking great, man.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we got to connect. But that's like, fuck, people are so weird and so unique.
Yep.
I love connecting. I want to hear people's stories. And now that I've gotten away from my bullshit and needing whatever validation, I just want to connect, because I was like, dude, everyone, you can have the most, and I don't understand how they could think that way, but like housewife or a single mom who's just at like taking care of kids. I was like, man, your story is wild. Like your kids, you're watching and creating humans.
Yep.
And then you're interacting with the world. Like everyone has so much going on in their planet. And if you're able to step away from your own, it's incredible. Like connecting with people is, and you're right, it's social media is a choice. You can choose to see all the darkness and get sucked in, which these days, some days I want to go down that.
Yep.
And
I've
then
done it.
I switch to the other side and see people smiling and giggling and, you know, posting in the smiles of their speed flying and their wingsuit jump. And it's like, okay, there's just so many different ways to enjoy this planet. Yep. Why am I ever giving any energy unless there's something I can learn and create some kind of change for? Outside of that, flush it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This podcast specifically for me helped me shift gears away from the shitty stuff that goes on social media, because I started thinking before I would post anything, do the people that listen to my podcast really give a fuck that I think this, that, or the other? Does it benefit the conversation that I want to be able to have? Or am I going to lose people because I'm talking about shit that they don't care about? And I finally just started going, but none of that shit matters. I don't miss any of that anymore. It's so nice to be able to step back. And I have my personal page where I'll throw out a bitch now and then, but I mean, I separate the two, and it's really nice to figure out you can actually do that. It doesn't always have to be about your opinion about this and what you think about that. It's fucking nice.
Yeah. Oh man, I love this. I've wanted to for the longest time, because you just chatting. Like I love that. If I wasn't in motion so much, I think I would be following your footsteps. It's just fucking awesome.
It's so much fun. As a matter of fact, right here and now, I'm going to say we're absolutely going to have a round 2, because beside the fact that I know I didn't even scratch the surface on the stories, because if Cola from Blue Sky says you got stories, you got fucking stories. And we didn't get into much of the stories. But I'm going to want to talk to you after you do your wingsuit base course, because I'm talking to you on this side of it. I want to talk to you on the backside and see how it met up to your expectations, if you're getting out of it what you want, if it's lived up to the hype for you. I really want to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. This is
awesome.
I want to ask you so many questions. Like, you keep dropping these tidbits, but then you keep asking me a question. I'm like,
that's only because I've got like 320 episodes out now, and the people that listen to my podcast have heard my fucking stories so much. I try not to tell them because they've heard them all by now. So, but dude, Carlo, I cannot thank you enough, man, and I'm not going to take any more of your time, because you're sitting in Paris Valley with planes flying overhead, and you're in a van talking to me instead of out there jumping. So we're going to stop now, but man, this has been fucking amazing.
Thank you. And I'm so glad I made it. Like, when we talked, I was like, I can only do one thing, and I want to be present right here. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, man. Someday we'll sit down and have a seltzer water together.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'll go out to Finland. Let's go.
Hell yeah, man. All right. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Damn.